We've already seen that the legal incidence of the tax doesn't affect the real incidence. So how do we analyze the real incidence of the tax and what determines it? We can see the real incidence of the tax by looking at the impact on the price for the consumer and the price for the firm. So the consumer's share of the tax is equal to how much more they pay now than they used to pay, right? So they used to be able to go to the store and buy this product for $250. That was the original equilibrium price. But now, in order to buy this product, the consumer has to pay $275. So you can see that of the $40 tax, consumers are paying 25 of those dollars, which is a little less than 2/3 of the tax, 62%. The producers, of course, pay the remaining 37% of the tax, but we can see that on the graph by looking at the difference in the price that the producer used to receive, right? So used to be that you earned $250 for selling this product. Now you're only going to get $235. So here we can, again, look at the difference between the old price and the new price to see the effect of the tax on producers. So producers are losing $15 on every sale because of the tax, which means they're paying about 38% of the tax, right? So in this case, consumers are paying a larger share of the tax than producers. And then we might ask, why do consumers always pay a larger share of the tax than producers? Is it always 62%? That seems random. No, it's not always this way. The impact of the tax on the two groups, consumers and producers, the real incidence of the tax, it depends on the relative elasticities of supply and demand. So the way that I like to remember that is this phrase: it's good to be flexible, because it's good life advice, but also helps you remember that the more elastic or more flexible the group is, the lower their tax burden. So more elastic will mean less taxes, of course, which is good. So what we could do to try to analyze the impact of a tax or the real incidence of the tax is to compare the relative elasticities of supply and demand. Here, because I see that consumers pay a larger share, producers pay a smaller share of the tax, I can conclude that supply, in this case, was more elastic than demand. And vice versa, demand was less elastic than supply, resulting in this real incidence. To confirm that, let's go ahead and calculate the elasticities of supply and demand at the original equilibrium point. So I've got my supply and demand equations here, which luckily means that I will be able to use the slope formula for elasticity. And I can find the elasticity of demand, again, at the original equilibrium point by taking price over quantity times 1 over the slope, which for demand is -0.5. And I can see here I've got 1/2 times -2 is equal to -1. So demand in this case was unit elastic. So it doesn't really depend on whether or not demand is inelastic, unit elastic, elastic, because we're concerned with the relative elasticity, whether or not demand is more or less elastic than supply. All right, so if I find my supply elasticity, remember at the same point, so I use 250 and 500 again, but now the slope of the supply curve is 0.3. I can see, plugging that into my calculator, that I get 1.67, which of course is bigger than 1, meaning that supply is elastic at that point. And because the elasticity of supply is greater in magnitude than the elasticity of demand, then I have confirmed, indeed, this is true, that supply was more elastic than demand, which is why the producers paid a smaller share of the tax in this example.